In a time forgotten by calendars, when kingdoms rose not by conquest but by character, and riches were measured in honor rather than gold, there lived a girl named Elira. Her village, nestled at the edge of the Virellan Mountains, was known for little more than the scent of wild jasmine and the songs of morning crows. But within Elira's heart burned a fire that neither poverty nor hardship could extinguish. Elira was the daughter of a weaver, born into thread and silence. Her mother, long lost to a winter fever, had passed on to her not gold or jewels, but kindness. The kind that fed strangers before oneself, that smiled even when the stomach ached, that treated each passing soul as kin. Each dawn, Elira would walk barefoot to the river Murel, a stream as old as the realm itself. It sang to her in splashes, echoed her thoughts in the ripple of its waves. There, she would fill her clay pot, kneel to whisper a prayer in the old tongue, and offer thanks for another breath. On one such morning, the sky painted in hues of amber and smoke, Elira saw something strange on the path that curved like a serpent toward the city of Durelden. A man. He lay by the side of the road, cloaked in dust, unmoving save for the rise and fall of his chest. His face was worn by the sun, lips cracked, eyes closed as if dreaming in pain. No one had stopped. Travelers passed, carts rumbled, and even the merchant from Ruisben, who wore 10 rings on 10 fingers, had simply looked and moved on. But Elira, she stopped. She placed her water pot on the earth, gently knelt beside him, and whispered, "Sir, can you hear me?" The man stirred. His voice was a rasp, dry and broken, "Water." Without hesitation, Elira lifted the pot to his lips. He drank like a man returned from death itself. When he opened his eyes, they were deep, stormy gray, rimmed with gold. Not eyes one would forget easily. He looked at her as though searching for memory. "Who are you?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Elira," she replied. "Daughter of Orin the Weaver. From the village of Sindale." He gave no name in return. Her instincts twitched. This was no ordinary traveler. His tunic, though torn, had once been stitched with threads of silver. Around his neck, beneath grime and mud, hung a medallion shaped like a lion's eye, ancient, unmistakable, and forbidden to all but those born into the house of Cirellin. That was the royal crest. But Elira said nothing. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out the last of her meal, a simple flatbread wrapped in wild leaves, with a slice of dried berry root. It was meant to be her breakfast, perhaps her only food for the day. But she didn't hesitate. "Eat," she said. The man took it, slowly, unsure if he deserved it. "You should not be here," she added softly. "Not alone. Not like this." He chewed slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you are in need." "And you are not?" Elira smiled faintly. "My hunger is not more important than your survival." There was silence between them. The kind that carried weight, history, destiny. When the man finished, he tried to rise. Pain gripped him, his leg was injured. She placed her shoulder under his and helped him stand. "Come," she said. "You cannot stay here. The road is no friend to the weak." She led him, half-dragged, back to her village. The sun climbed high, scorching the earth, but Elira did not stop. When they reached her cottage, a hut of mud walls and thatched roof, the neighbors whispered. Some disapproved, some pitied, most ignored. Elira laid him on her own straw bed, covered him with a woven blanket, and tended his wounds with herbal poultices passed down by her mother. He slept for hours, murmuring names in his fever: Theron, the council, betrayal. She watched over him, wondering who he truly was. A fallen soldier? A banished noble? A fugitive? But she never asked. She only cared that he lived. On the third morning, the man awoke stronger. He sat up, and his eyes, still stormy, still gold-rimmed, searched the hut. Elira was grinding herbs by the window, sunlight crowning her dark hair like a halo. "You saved me," he said. She turned. "I only did what was right." He hesitated. Most would have walked away. Then most have forgotten what it means to be human. He stared at her for a long time. I am called Kaelin. She nodded slowly. The name meant nothing to her. But beyond the hills, in the city of Durelden, that name carried the weight of an empire. Kaelin, son of Lord Farron, heir to the vast dominion of Corellon, richest man in all the known lands, and a prince in exile. And Alira, poor, kind-hearted Alira, had fed him her last meal, not knowing she'd just stepped into the story that would change the fate of an entire kingdom. As the sun dipped behind the hills that evening, and Alira lit a single oil lamp, the shadows in her home whispered of secrets yet to be unveiled. Kaelin's gaze never left her, not in love, not yet, but in wonder. For the first time in his life, he had met someone who asked nothing, expected nothing, and gave everything. But in the corners of Durelden, wheels turned. Spies watched. And word of a missing heir began to ripple through the noble courts. On the fourth morning, a thick mist hung over the village like a breath held too long. The villagers whispered that mist meant the spirits were watching, judging the hearts of men. Alira, wrapped in a simple shawl, stepped outside to gather river herbs. Kaelin, now able to walk with a limp, followed her gaze as she disappeared into the fog. The scent of earth and pine filled the air. In the quiet, Kaelin sat at the wooden table Alira's father had carved from an old apple tree. He studied the cottage, modest but clean, walls lined with herbs, handmade tools, and a single braid of red cloth, clearly her mother's old sash. He touched it gently, sensing its significance. When Alira returned, her cheeks red from the morning chill, she handed him a bowl of warm barley stew. You should eat, she said. I should also leave, Kaelin replied softly. I cannot bring danger to your door. Then tell me who hunts you, she said, sitting across from him. Let me decide if it is danger, or merely a story waiting to be told. He hesitated. Then he spoke, not as a fugitive, but as a man tired of secrets. I am Kaelin the Rick Corellon. My father, Lord Farron, ruled the central provinces. We were not kings, but our wealth-fed kings, armed their soldiers, paid for their thrones. And now, she asked. Now, my father is dead. Poisoned. The council claims it was illness. I know otherwise. My cousin, Elric, desires the throne and the vault. He has eyes in every city, knives in every alley. I fled Durelden the night my father died. Alira's breath caught. She looked at him, not with fear, but with a steady calm. I believe you, she said. Kaelin blinked. Why? Because truth wears no armor. And lies never bleed. He stared at her, something old and aching flickering in his chest. Trust. A feeling he buried long ago beneath court masks and golden chains. That afternoon, while Kaelin rested, Alira went to the village square. She traded dried mushrooms for a loaf of bread and 2 apples. The baker's wife frowned at her. Feeding that stranger still? Alira nodded. Be careful, the woman whispered. Kindness draws both angels and wolves. Alira smiled but said nothing. For she knew that kindness was not weakness, it was a sword most were too afraid to wield. But elsewhere, the first signs of trouble brewed. In Durelden, beyond the marble walls and golden roofs, word had spread among the elite, Kaelin was alive. At a darkened council table lit by flame and fear, Elric leaned forward, his voice coiled like a snake. Find him. Dead or returned, I care not. But if he speaks before the nobles vote, I lose everything. A man in a black cloak bowed low. We've tracked rumors to the eastern border. A girl. A healer. A weaver's daughter. Then burn the village if you must, Elric said coldly. But bring me Kaelin's head. That night, back in Sindale, Kaelin awoke to the distant sound of a flute. Alira sat outside, playing softly beneath the silver moon. The notes were sad, like stories that never got their endings. Kaelin stepped outside. That tune, it's from the old kingdom of Velareth. She smiled. My mother's blood. She was Valeran. Said music could keep memories alive. Do you play for memory, or for something lost? For both, she said. And sometimes, for something I haven't met yet. He sat beside her. They watched the stars in silence, two lives from separate worlds, seated under the same heavens. Suddenly, a rustling in the nearby trees. Alira stood. Foxes, she whispered. They come close when they scent strangers. Kalen, tense, reached for the wooden stick he used as a cane. But it wasn't a fox. It was a man. Tall, armored in dark leather, moving through the trees with eyes that searched like a hawk's. Kalen grabbed Alira's hand. Inside. Now. They hid in silence, barely breathing. The man sniffed the air, glanced around, and moved on. Alira turned to Kalen, her voice a trembling whisper. That was no merchant. He was looking for someone. For me, Kalen said grimly. Alira's eyes hardened. Then we must decide. Do we flee, or do we stand? Kalen looked at her in awe. A peasant girl, no shield, no army, yet braver than most lords he'd ever known. I will not bring ruin to your home, he said. But you already brought something far more dangerous, she replied. Hope. And in that moment, under the veil of night, Kalen knew he was no longer just running from a kingdom. He was running towards something greater. Perhaps fate. Perhaps love. But fate is rarely gentle. And as the moon slipped behind clouds and the owls resumed their watchful calls, the first spark of war had already been lit. Kalen's enemies had found his scent. Alira's village would never be the same again. Phalwyn was no ordinary man. He was once a keeper of the old ways, before the nobles banned the teaching of histories that told of power outside palaces. His beard flowed like water, his eyes pale as ash. You've come, finally, he said before she could speak. You saw him, she replied. I see many things. A boy clothed in royalty and grief. A girl born of no crown, yet chosen by the threads of fate. And a fire that has not burned here in generations. She lowered her voice. They will come for him. For me. For the village. They already are. Phalwyn rose with the help of a crooked staff, carved with symbols older than the kingdom. What will you do, Alira? I'll protect him, she said. He trusted me. I will not let him be hunted like an animal. He studied her for a moment, then reached into a chest. He handed her a small vial filled with pale blue liquid. This will hide him for one day. No scent, no sound, no trail. But only once. Use it wisely. She nodded. Back at the cottage, Kalen was preparing to leave. He had wrapped his leg, tucked the lion's eye pendant into his shirt, and scribbled a note on old parchment. You're leaving? Alira asked. I must. You've risked too much already. You'll never make it past the woods. They're already watching. He turned to her, eyes dark. Then what would you have me do? Bring war to your doorstep? She stepped closer. This war came the moment you collapsed in my arms. We face it together. Kalen faltered. You don't understand, he said. You don't know what I've done, the choices I've made. My hands are not clean, Alira. I was raised among gold and wolves. I've hurt people, trusted the wrong ones. I watched my father die in silence because I was too afraid to speak. She placed her hand over his heart. Then speak now. Fight now. Not for your throne. For yourself. A moment passed. Then Kalen whispered, I won't run again. That evening, Phalwyn returned with news. 3 riders. Black cloaks. Not from the village. They're camped by the old mill. Scouts, Kalen muttered. No, Phalwyn said. Worse. Hounds. Trained to sniff truth and track royal blood. Alira prepared a small satchel. Then we must leave at first light. Head for the Valley of Crows. My uncle keeps a smithy there. He fought in the border rebellion. He'll help us. But Kaelin was staring at the flames. We'll never make it alone. Faelwyn sat beside him. Then you need allies. And I know where they sleep. That night, under cover of darkness, they made their way to the Shrine of Old Voices, a forgotten crypt carved into the mountain's edge. Inside were the resting places of the last vowbound, warriors who had pledged their blades to truth before the royal courts outlawed their order. Kaelin lit a candle before a crumbling statue of Serral Dawn, the first vowbound, her sword forever raised to the sky. Faelwyn whispered ancient words, and the wind shifted. Speak, he said to Kaelin. Kaelin stepped forward. I am Kaelin the Rick Corellin, son of Theron. I have no crown, no army, no right to command. But I ask, not for power, but for justice. If any spirits remain who remember the oaths of old, let them hear me now. Silence. Then, a groan from the stone. A low hum filled the chamber. The air thickened. The fire flickered blue. And from the walls, a hidden door creaked open. Behind it, armor. Swords. Sealed scrolls. And a single ring, shaped like the sun cradling the moon. The ring of accord, Faelwyn said. The last vow still unbroken. Once worn, it binds your word to truth. If you lie, it burns. Kaelin took the ring. I vow, he said, sliding it onto his finger, to reclaim my father's honor. To seek justice for the broken. And to never again turn away from those who stood when I fled. The ring pulsed, warm. It had accepted him. Elira stepped forward, awe in her eyes. What now? Kaelin turned to her. Now we gather what strength we can. We cross the valley. And we light a fire the kingdom cannot ignore. But as they emerged from the shrine, a dark figure watched from the trees, a scout with the mark of Elric upon his blade. He turned, mounted his horse, and vanished into the mist. In 2 days' time, Sindale would no longer exist on the royal maps. For mercy was a word Elric had long forgotten. The morning sky cracked open with thunder. Elira woke before dawn. Her father, old and frail, still lay asleep beside the hearth. He had not spoken in weeks. His mind wandered now between present and past, caught in memories of a wife long buried beneath the weeping tree. She packed silently, salted roots, wool for binding wounds, and the scroll Kaelin had recovered from the shrine. He was already waiting outside, dressed in armor too large but meaningful nonetheless. The ring of truth glowed faintly on his finger, like a heartbeat in metal. Ready? He asked. She nodded, though fear throbbed in her chest. Before they could leave, Faelwyn appeared from the mists once more. You must go north, he said. To the Spire of Dawns. There are still those who remember your father. Lords who may not kneel to Elric's lies. But how do we find them? Kaelin asked. Faelwyn handed him a sealed parchment marked with a raven feather. Show this to the guards at Windmere. If they are still loyal, they will let you through. Kaelin bowed in thanks, but his voice was heavy. And what of Sindale? Faelwyn looked toward the horizon. Your village has already been marked. The wolves will be here by nightfall. Elira's breath caught. My father, he cannot travel. He's too weak. Kaelin's hand went to her shoulder. We'll carry him. Together. They loaded Orin the Weaver into a straw-lined cart. Wrapped in blankets and herbs, he murmured stories in his sleep, of thread that spoke and mountains that wept. By midday, they reached the far edge of Sindale. And just in time. From the eastern trail, dust rose like a serpent. Riders, black-cloaked, armored, faces covered in masks of iron, rode with torches in hand. Elric's men, Kaelin said grimly. Elira stared at them. They'll burn everything. Yes, Faelwyn replied, stepping forward. Unless someone remains behind to delay them. Kaelin looked at the old man. No. Yes, Faelwyn said calmly. My time in this world has long passed. But yours is only beginning. I won't let you die for me. You won't let me die, Falwyn replied, but I will choose to die for you. And that is the last freedom a man can own. He placed something in Kaelin's hand, a carved stone shaped like a bird in flight. When the time comes, let this fall into the fire. And know that I chose this path with joy. Then, Falwyn walked alone into the village square and waited, as Kaelin, Alira, and her sleeping father slipped through the hidden north path between the hills. From the trees, they watched. Elric's riders galloped into the village like a storm of shadows. Falwyn stood unmoving. One rider dismounted and raised a sword. There were no screams. Only the sound of fire. Sindale was gone. But 3 hearts moved northward, one burning with vengeance, one with hope, and one, silent and dreaming of a time long gone. By night, they reached the edge of the Emberbridge forest, a haunted place, some claimed, where old spirits tested travelers. Kaelin helped Alira set up camp. They spoke little. But when the stars emerged, Kaelin turned to her. You didn't have to come, he said. You could have stayed. And let you face this alone, she replied. Never. He looked at her hands, scratched, burned, strong. You gave me your last meal, he whispered. I owe you more than my life. You owe me nothing, she said. But if you must repay me, stay true. No matter how high you rise again, remember the girl who saw you as a man, not a crown. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his cloak and handed her the lion's eye pendant. What is this? My proof, he said. Of who I am. And of who I was. If I fall, take this to Windmere. Finish what I couldn't. She closed her fingers around it. Then you won't fall. The night deepened, and with it, a silence between them that wasn't empty, but full of things yet to be said. Far away, in the halls of Durelden, Elric stood before the council, his voice honeyed and false. My cousin is dead, he lied. Bandits, likely. Or wolves. The east is wild these days. The council murmured. Only one man, Lord Raymar of the North, narrowed his eyes. Alira, he whispered to himself. That name again. It was in the prophecy. The forest of Emberbridge was not like other woods. The trees whispered. Paths shifted. Time moved like smoke, sometimes fast, sometimes still. The old tales said the forest had a soul. A memory. And it remembered kindness. Alira walked beside the cart, holding her father's hand. His eyes fluttered in dreams, lips moving with silent words. Kaelin walked ahead, sword in one hand, torch in the other. By the 3rd night in the forest, their food had dwindled. Kaelin caught nothing in his traps. Alira gathered herbs, but most were bitter. She boiled roots in silence while Kaelin studied the map Falwyn had drawn, a twisting trail leading to Windmere. But something gnawed at him. Do you hear that? He asked. Alira paused. No birds. No wind. Exactly. Suddenly, a branch snapped nearby. Kaelin drew his blade. From the shadows stepped a woman, cloaked in grey feathers, eyes silver like moonlit steel. Her voice rang out like chimes, ancient and melodic. You wear a ring not given, but awakened. Kaelin did not lower his sword. Who are you? I am Selethai, guardian of the Ember Paths. And you tread near the threshold of trials. Alira stepped between them. We seek only passage. We mean no harm. Selethai's gaze shifted. And yet you carry the weight of fire. The scent of blood. And the burden of lost kings. Kaelin lowered his sword slowly. If there is a trial, I accept it. But let her go. The guardian's smile was sad. It does not choose who enters. Only who returns. And with that, the world shifted. The fire vanished. The forest turned white. And Kaelin found himself alone. He stood in a vast hall of mirrors. In each reflection, himself, but different. In one, he wore a golden crown, yet his eyes were cold. In another, he was cloaked in blood, sword raised over Alira's lifeless body. He fell to his knees. No. A voice echoed from the mirrors. The crown bends all. The question is not who you are now, but who you'll become. He gritted his teeth. I will not be my cousin. The voice whispered, then choose. Before him appeared three objects, a crown, a sword, and a folded scarf, the same red sash Alira's mother had worn. He reached for the scarf. The mirrors shattered. Alira's trial was different. She stood in her old home, intact, untouched. Her mother was alive, weaving by the fire. Alira, she said softly. Why do you chase shadows when you could return to peace? Alira ran into her arms. It smelled like jasmine and flower. I missed you, she whispered. Then stay, her mother said, holding her. Stay where it is warm. Let others fight their wars. But Alira pulled back. No. If I stay, I let the world forget kindness. And if I do that, I lose you again anyway. Her mother smiled. Then go, my brave daughter. Alira opened her eyes. She was back in the clearing. The fire still burning. Kaelin beside her. They had passed. Selathai stood beneath the trees. Few passed the forest without loss. But you came in with truth, and walked through memory with unbroken hearts. She handed Kaelin a pouch. In this are seeds from the elder tree. Plant them wherever you wish to begin anew. Then she turned into mist, and was gone. By the edge of the forest, Windmere's towers rose from the horizon, stone against sky. Kaelin clutched the raven-sealed parchment. We're close. But Alira turned to the forest, her eyes misty. Do you think we were meant to find each other? Kaelin answered, not with words, but by taking her hand. They didn't need to say it. The forest had already shown them their truths. But not far away, Elric had received word. A scout returned, half dead, horse foaming. They crossed Ember Bridge, he gasped. With the girl, and the ring. Elric's face twisted. Then Windmere must fall. Before they reached the gates. Windmere was carved into the cliffs of the western reach, its walls older than any kingdom, its people fiercely loyal to memory and honor. A banner of twin falcons danced above its gate, untouched by time. As Kaelin, Alira, and the now silent Orin arrived at the gates, the guards stopped them. State your name and intent, barked a voice, armored and hard. Kaelin stepped forward, pulling back his cloak. The lion's eye pendant glinted in the sun. I am Kaelin the Rick Corellin, son of Lord Theron. I carry the ring of truth, and a letter bearing the seal of Faelwyn the Keeper. The guards froze. Then one fell to his knee. Open the gates. Windmere welcomed them not with cheers, but with quiet nods, and a murmur of hope that spread like wind across the stone streets. Kaelin was led to the great hall. There, Lord Merrin, the steward of Windmere and an old friend of Kaelin's father, awaited. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with hair white as birch bark and eyes like flint. I had prayed the rumors were true, Merrin said, embracing Kaelin. We feared you were lost. I was, Kaelin replied. Until someone found me. He glanced at Alira. Merrin studied her. And who is she? The reason I am still alive. Merrin's eyes softened. Then all of Windmere owes you, lady. I'm no lady, Alira said with a quiet smile. Just a weaver's daughter. In this land, Merrin replied, bravery makes royalty, not blood. They sat in council chambers that evening. Scrolls and maps stretched across a long oak table. Kaelin told his tale, of Elric's betrayal, Faelwyn's sacrifice, the burning of Sindale, and the trials of the forest. Merrin listened. When Kaelin finished, he rose. Then we must act, Merrin said. Elric's grip on the council grows daily. Lords too weak or greedy to question his lies have already pledged loyalty. But there are others, House Raedwin of the North, the River Court of Brast, even the Desert Riders of Tenhar. If they knew you lived, they would come. But messengers will be intercepted, Kaelin said. Spies fill the roads. Not all messengers ride on roads, Meryn said. He clapped twice. From a side door entered 3 robed women, silent, agile, and draped in violet silk. The daughters of Whisper, Meryn explained. Trained in the ways of shadow. They will carry your truth. Each took a scroll, sealed with Kaelin's mark, and disappeared into the night. Kaelin looked toward the horizon through stained glass. The storm is coming. Elira stood beside him. Then let it come. The next morning, the city prepared. Windmere's bells tolled not in warning, but in awakening. Armories opened, scouts rode out, and banners were dusted from long-sealed vaults. Elira walked the gardens with Orin. Her father no longer spoke, but he listened. She read him stories as they sat beneath the elder trees, tales he once told her, about stars that whispered and kings who fell in love with commoners. And Kaelin. Kaelin trained. He sparred in the courtyard with Meryn's captains. He bled. He bruised. He grew stronger. The ring of truth on his finger pulsed with each blow, reminding him of the vow he had made. That night, Elira joined him on the battlements. You fight like a prince now, she teased. I fight like a man who knows what's at stake, he replied. She looked at the sky. Do you ever miss the world before all this? I miss one moment, he said. The moment you gave me bread with shaking hands and didn't ask who I was. She met his gaze. And I miss the man who limped beside me and listened without trying to lead. Their hands brushed. For a moment, time stood still. But below them, hooves thundered in the distance. A scout galloped into the courtyard, his cloak torn, his face pale. They're coming, he shouted. A host of mercenaries, 3 banners. Elric's gold, they ride under false colors, but they bear his wrath. How far? Meryn demanded. A day. Maybe less. And, they have siege carts. Elira's heart dropped. Kaelin turned to Meryn. Then we hold them. No matter what comes, Windmere must not fall. Meryn nodded. Tomorrow, we raise the falcons. Tomorrow, we roar. Far away, in the capital of Durelden, Elric watched smoke rise from a scrying bowl. They've reached Windmere, whispered his advisor. They are no longer hiding. Elric's face twisted. Then let them feel the weight of my crown. Burn them. Bury them. And when the flames are gone, bring me the girl. The night before the siege, Windmere did not sleep. Torches lit every corridor. Banners were raised from the ramparts. Blacksmiths hammered through the moonlight. The city had not been under siege for over a century, but its bones remembered. Kaelin stood before the great gate with Meryn, watching as engineers reinforced the barricades. Oil pots were hoisted. Archers took position. Elira walked the walls beside the women and children who had chosen not to flee. She helped distribute water. Bandaged wounds. Whispered courage to the fearful. But her own heart trembled. Later, she found herself in the chapel of wind and stone, a hollowed tower where the people once prayed to the sky. Kaelin found her there, seated on a bench of marble vines. I didn't know you prayed, he said gently. I don't, she replied. But sometimes silence is easier here. He sat beside her. I never wanted this, he said. Not the war. Not the crown. Not the killing. I know, she said. But if I don't fight, more villages will burn like Sindale. More fathers will fade like mine. I have to see this through. She looked at him. You're not alone. Their hands touched again, this time with no hesitation. Kaelin leaned in, and the silence of the chapel folded around them like wings. Dawn broke red. The enemy came with banners flapping in the wind, wolves, coins, broken towers. They numbered more than Kaelin expected. Thousands. Mercenaries from the southern marshes. Thugs in polished armor. War drums beat like thunder. Meryn stood at the high wall, blade drawn. Kaelin joined him, now wearing the ring of truth, the lion's eye pendant around his neck, and a cloak that once belonged to his father. The enemy commander rode forward. "Windmere," he shouted. "Surrender the traitor Kaelin and the girl. Open your gates and be spared." Kaelin stepped forward. "My name is Kaelin the Rick Corellin. I am no traitor. I am the rightful heir, son of Theron, bearer of the vow. If you cross this field, you make war against the realm's true blood." The commander spat. "We don't serve crowns. We serve coin. Then your coin dies with you." Kaelin raised his fist. Windmere's horns cried out across the hills. The battle had begun. The siege lasted through the day. Flaming arrows rained down. The gates held, barely. Boiling oil spilled from the towers. Kaelin fought alongside his men, blades singing. Elira worked in the infirmary, hands stained with blood and herbs, whispering courage into dying ears. Once, a breach opened in the northern wall. Kaelin raced to it, slaying 2 raiders before they touched the inner court. A third swung at him, Kaelin ducked, parried, and struck true. But a crossbow bolt whistled from the shadows. Elira screamed. Kaelin fell to his knees, bolt in his shoulder. The soldier who fired was already dead, cut down by Meryn's guards. Elira ran to Kaelin's side, eyes wide with fear. "No, please, no." He gritted his teeth. "It's not deep. I'm all right." "Don't you dare die," she whispered, pressing cloth to his wound. "I'm not going anywhere. I still haven't found out if you love me or not." She stared at him. And without a word, kissed him. Not for the first time. Not for the last. But for the first time where time itself seemed to pause. "I think I do," she said, breathless. "And I think I always will." By dusk, the enemy was broken. Windmere still stood. Kaelin, wounded but standing, raised his sword atop the wall. "Let it be known, Windmere stands with truth. Let Elric send more. Let him come himself." Cheers rose like thunder. But Elira's eyes were on the hills. Smoke. And riders. She grabbed Kaelin's arm. "Look." In the distance, banners approached, green and silver, black and blue, sunburst and wing. Meryn squinted. "Raedwyn. Brast. Tenhar. The northern court rides." The daughters of Whisper had succeeded. Reinforcements had arrived. Hope had returned. And so had war. Far to the east, Elric shattered a goblet against his council table. "They rally," he snarled. "They crown him in their hearts." His advisor stepped back. "Should we summon the Black Order?" Elric turned slowly. "No. Not yet. But send word to the east wall. Tell them to prepare the furnace. If I can't kill Kaelin with steel, I'll bury him in fire."